Mr. Mayor, it is 5:39, and I do see that we are live streaming, and you can begin your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. I see that we have quorum, so I call into session this regular meeting of council on Monday, June the 7th at 5:40 p.m. We're now in session. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the agenda for the June 7th, 2021 regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated. Is there any comments?
Any discussion on the agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll begin with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that does carry. That does bring you to your next item on the agenda, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof.
Thank you. After viewing the agenda, is there any council members that have to declare a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I shall note.
Okay, thank you. And before we begin the COVID presentations, there's a few announcements that I would like to make with the indulgence of council. First are two staff kudos. The 40 over 40. Each year, Business Link Media Group honors a group of 40 professionals under the age of 40 who consistently produce high-quality work and contribute to their communities in a variety of ways. I'm happy to announce that not one, but two Town of Pelham employees have been recognized with this honor in 2021. Leah Letford, the town's special events and festivals programmer, has worked her magic daily, leading the successful planning and execution of award-winning events in 2020, such as Canada Day, the Niagara Way, and Christmas in Pelham. Mark McDonald, the town's communications and public relations specialist, has thrived as a municipal communicator, producing award-winning work for the town of Pelham in its redesigned website, corporate communications plan, and COVID-19 reopening plan. Congratulations to Leah and Mark for their outstanding work and dedication to their craft. I can assure you that your work is greatly appreciated by all members of council. In the finance department, again, the duo of Ms. Quinlan and Charlotte shine again. In 2021, Pelham is yet again the first Niagara area municipality to file its financial information return with the province. This is significant because it is proof positive that the town's books are in order, that audit, year-end results, and financial statements are reliable and accepted both by third-party accountants and the provincial government. Financial accountability starts with having a really good grasp of how and where you spend your own money. The early FIR filing fully demonstrates this again. The town of Pelham would like to congratulate the region, tongue-in-cheek, the region of Niagara on once again being second to file its FIR. And to the region, a silver medal is pretty good, and you got beat by a very good team. So thank you for that. Yes, on Tuesday, let's read the script. As many of you are aware, June is Pride Month. On June 1st, it was my pleasure to be joined by members of Pride Niagara and Councillor Olson and town staff to raise the Pride flag in front of Town Hall. Though this was a small celebration due to the pandemic restrictions on gatherings, the event's significance was no less impactful. At the event on Tuesday, I was particularly struck by a comment made by the members of Pride Niagara in that the members of the LGBTQ plus community no longer feel the need to go to large city centers like Toronto to be who they are, to feel comfortable in their communities. By raising the Pride flag and showing our support, we create inclusive and welcoming spaces for our citizens to be who they are in their own community. As I said on Tuesday, our communities are stronger when we embrace all of our citizens and create inclusive environments for every one of us to thrive. Through raising a flag is a nice gesture to show our support, we must remember that our words and actions are what truly count as we celebrate Pride Month now and throughout the year. Looking ahead to this coming week, it's also Seniors Month is also June. And on Tuesday at 12 o'clock, we'll be raising the flag for Seniors Month in front of the Town Hall. And immediately following that, there will be a dedication of a flower bed at the MCC on the north side. So again, we hope members of the community and members of council will join us in that event. And one last one I'd like to mention, and this is one that I know Councillor Olson always looks forward to, and this is that June 7th to 13th inclusive is the Ontario Local Food Week. June is the perfect time of year to celebrate the delicious food grown here in Ontario. The first spring crops, such as asparagus, spinach, and green onions, are at your local food stores or neighborhood food stands, with strawberries just starting. We encourage all members of the community to shop local and support your farmers. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to item 4.1.1 on the agenda, which is the COVID-19 pandemic update from Chief Limburner.
Okay. Chief, you have the floor.
Good evening, through you, Mr. Mayor, Council, SLT, and members of the viewing public. Just a quick update on our COVID situation. As of today, Pelham's had a total case count of 586 with a total active of 12. Across the region, we've had 15,927 cases. We had 9 today, new cases. Out of those, 453 are active. Total resolved is 15,605, and we've had a total death count of 409. Across the province, we're at 536,607 total cases. Of those, 519,801 are resolved, and we've had 8,869 fatalities. Our hospital admissions continue to whittle their way down. We have total admissions of 547. Of those, 497 are ICU, and of those, 339 are on ventilators. Across the country, we're at 1.393 million total cases. Of those, 1.343 million are resolved. We have 25,942 fatalities. Today, Niagara's case doubling time has moved up to 429 days. Our positivity rate is at 4.1. Our reproduction rate's at 0.8. As far as the variants of concern are in Niagara, the B117, which is a UK variant, we've had 4,066 detections. The B1351 South African, we've had 0. The B1617 India variant, we've got 2. And the P1 variant from Brazil, we've had 9 in the region. Currently, public health is working with 15 active outbreaks. They've resolved 401. Our infection spread continues to close contact with confirmed cases is 65.9%, community spread 25.4%, unknown spread 6.5%, and travel 2.2%. As far as vaccines are administered, Niagara is at 318,937, which is just slightly over 60%. and that was the first threshold that public health was hoping to hit, and we've hit that point. Province-wide, 10,109,404. Countrywide, 26,271,415. As far as our provincial indicators go, our reproduction numbers in green. Our new cases per 100,000 population is red. New cases daily average is green. New cases unknown origin is orange. Hospital admissions are red, and positivity rate is in red. As of this morning at 8 o'clock, all adults 70 years and older can book their second shot, and that's allowing them to move that up to that 12-week span. Anyone that had received the Pfizer or Moderna shot, their first shot, on or before April the 18th are now allowed to book their second shot, and that's all through the provincial website. We got word this afternoon the province will be moving into step 1 as of June the 11th. That's this Friday. The addition to that is Niagara has a Section 22 order against that puts further restrictions on that. So that basically around the 4-person minimum or 4-person maximum at a table on an outdoor patio. In Niagara, you have to be from the same family. And the province is also moving up the migrant workers into the for their second shot. They're really focusing on that group. So that's the end of my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? And Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. My group was eligible to put their name in for a second shot today. And when I did manage to get through on the provincial website, the only sites available were out of our region. They were all Toronto area and beyond. So I'm wondering if you know if we're getting more dates here.
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Though I was on first thing this morning, there were a number of local sites available, but they've been booked up. There was a pretty overwhelming response to the new openings. So we do have a schedule that Public Health has put together for our MCC, but they indicate that they will be adding more dates to those schedules depending on inventory. But currently right now, if you want to get something in the next week or so, you're going to have to unfortunately go out of the region.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. Turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator, for information. And for the vote, I would begin with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that carries. That does bring you to your next agenda item, which is a presentation from our CAO, Mr. David Cribbs.
Okay. Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Council. Just one COVID-related item to update you on at this time, which is you will be aware you did authorize a picnic table lending program to local businesses. This year we have 18 picnic tables are going out this week. Happily today, the announcement was that Friday at noon patios can start, and something for us all to be excited about. We do actually have 6 picnic tables that could be sent to area restaurants if they want 1 more or 2 more, as the case may be. And we're going to continue to do that on a first come, first served basis. So there are 6 outstanding if anyone wishes them. But really, we've had great success with that program, and to my knowledge, we're the only municipality in Niagara doing so. So kudos to you for authorizing that. Thank you. I think it's going to be great help to local businesses. That's where we're at.
Thank
Subject
you.
to questions. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Any questions or comments on the CAO's report? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribbs, Chief Administrative Officer for Information. And I'll begin the vote with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart. Sorry, Councillor Stewart, I think you were muted.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. Mr. Mayor, through you, we do have a registered delegation from a Mr. Brian Green from Trout Unlimited Canada. We'll just ask Ms. Leach to bring the presenter into the meeting. Mr. Green, I believe that, oh, he's just connecting in. Mr. Green, we do see you in the meeting. I just want to remind you that delegations are limited to 10 minutes. In this regard, I'll be timing the presentation, and at 8 minutes, I will ring a reminder bell, and then at 10 minutes, I will ring the bell again. If you are ready, sir, you may begin to go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, councilors, staff, thank you very much for allowing me to present this evening. I have read the report that the CAO and the town solicitor have provided each of you in your file. And that report is so thorough and so detailed and so, if I can say so, eloquently written that it makes redundant a great many of the things that I was going to say. So I will not bore you with repeating what's on that document. I would, however, like to raise a couple of issues that may be relevant to your deliberations on this issue. First of all, I'd like to talk about dams. Dam removal has become a rather large industry in Ontario and indeed across Canada. Dams were built 100 years or so ago, as this one was, when the attitude was, we've got lots of nature, we've got lots of water, what we need is industry. So the dams were built to supply canneries and to supply mills, to create impoundments for agriculture and so on. It's only in the last 40 or 50 years that we've realized the damage that those dams do. They disconnect a watershed, prevent the passage of aquatic species, and more importantly, warm and degrade the water as it flows through. In this specific case, we have a dam that blocks the headwaters of the last remaining cold water stream in Niagara. We humans have managed to degrade all of the other streams that flow down from the escarpment into Lake Ontario to the point where they can no longer be considered pristine cold water streams. We've tried to do that with this one. We've paved over the headwaters, we've run roads along the valley, we've dumped salt and chemicals into it, and we've dammed it up, not just here, but in other places as well. The thing that allows 12 Mile Creek to survive as a cold water system is the incredible amount of water, of cool, pristine spring water that flows out of the Fonthill Escarpment. That's what's allowed that stream to survive. This particular dam not only interrupts the flow of water and the moving of aquatic species up and down, it warms the water, degrades it, and no matter which way you look at it, bypassing that dam or removing it, which is not on the table, would be a benefit to 12 Mile Creek. I'd like to talk very briefly about Trout Unlimited Canada. The local chapter, the Niagara chapter, has dedicated itself to preserving what is good about 12 Mile Creek and trying to restore what has been degraded. We're a local volunteer group of residents who believe that 12 Mile Creek is a gem and worth preserving. On the national level, Trout Unlimited Canada is a conservation organization, often unfortunately thought of as a fishing club, but it's a national conservation organization dedicated to the conservation, preservation, and restoration of our cold water resources in this country. I would like to just add to that there is a very real possibility that Trout Unlimited Canada would be chosen as the project manager for this proposed project. If that should happen, and a contract has not yet been signed, but I understand that one is in progress, then you have the added reassurance to all of those in the document in front of you that a nonprofit conservation organization will be in charge of this project. Not a developer, not a contractor, not a for-profit organization, but an organization dedicated to the preservation and conservation of cold water. And I think that is a further reassurance to you that this will be done and done right. I'd like to address some of the correspondence you've received. I understand some of you received a report from Dr. Brand. I'm not sure what his motivation is or what he hopes to achieve with this. It should not have gone to you. You have no interest in this particular, in the nuts and bolts of this project. It should have gone to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, whose project it essentially is. However, he makes 3 points, and let's look at them. The first is that the St. John's Pond in the St. John's Conservation Area is worse. That may be, it may not be. His evidence is not very robust, but let's say it is. Let's say the St. John's Pond is worse. The consultant who was hired by St. Catharines to find a project that the DFO would approve considered the St. John's Pond and decided against it because it is a Niagara Peninsula conservation property, and as such would unlikely to be approved by the DFO. Secondly, to the credit of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, they recognize the damage that St. John's Pond is doing and have undertaken, committed themselves to fixing that. They received a report from the postgraduate students at the Ecosystem Restoration Program at Niagara College a little more than a year ago that outlined 3 ways of bypassing or removing the influence of that pond, and they are committed to doing so. The second thing that Dr. Brand mentions is that really the Cannery Pond isn't all that bad. The average temperature is raised only a couple of degrees. And the key word there is average. The pond, as he points out, lowers the temperature of the system during the winter. The water bubbles out of the ground at Marlene Stewart Street Park at around 12 degrees, winter and summer, never changes. It hits the pond during the winter, and that pond is frozen over, or mostly frozen over, at around 0, 1, or 2 degrees. So naturally, the pond has a cooling influence during the winter. When you average that with what it does to the stream during the summer, you see the difficulty. During the summer, the data that we have, both the NPCA and Niagara College's data indicates that the warming influence of that pond is between 7 and 10 degrees during the hottest days of the summer. That's the difference between life and death for both brook trout and other aquatic species. The fact is that there are no fish, we now know that, it's been studied, there are no fish above the pond, above the dam. The reason for that is twofold. Number one, there's a dam, they can't get by it. Number two, downstream of the pond, the water is so warm that fish are unable to survive. At least cold water fish are unable to survive. Brook trout suffer at 20 degrees and die at 22. They won't reproduce over 17. The final point that Dr. Brand makes is that the pond is an ecosystem of its own and very valuable. Well, Nobody's talking about removing the pond. The pond is going to stay. That's a condition of the landowner, and we are respecting that condition. Where other jurisdictions are removing dams for the very same reason that we're bypassing this one, to restore the balance to the stream, to allow the source water to enter the full watershed, we're obeying the landowner's wishes, and any plans that are drawn up, and none have been yet, will maintain that pond. A couple of other points that have been raised. It was mentioned that maybe it would be a good idea to see if this money that is St. Catharines compensation money could be applied to the Rice Road outlet from the stormwater management pond, which you have allotted $70,000 to fix. That too was considered by the consultant. There are two reasons he rejected it. Number one is it's the town's responsibility. It's on the town's property that the pond is. And it was felt that the DFO would not approve it because it is town responsibility. The second reason is that it's not expensive enough. The city of St. Catharines has to spend $250,000 in compensation. This would not soak up that amount of money. Another issue that's been raised is preservation of nature.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You've reached the 10-minute limit. Can you wrap up your presentation in 30 seconds? Thank you.
Sure. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. We've had our eye on this for a long time, but it's been cost prohibitive. There is no way that our volunteer organization could manage it. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make a real difference to 12 Mile Creek. If we decide not to do it in Pelham, believe me, there will be a lineup from here to Welland of other communities that will be anxious to get that money. I can think of 3 dam removal projects on the Saugeen River alone that are simply waiting for the finances to get this done. So it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity. I urge you to help further it.
Thank you, Mr. Green, for your presentation. Is there questions, comments on Mr. Green's presentation from council members? And I see Councilor Olson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at this, we have a partnership of a landowner that's interested in stewardship. We have a federal government who's casting a critical eye out on any of these types of anything that happens with fisheries and oceans. We have the province and we have the MPCA. In your experience, is this a unique type of partnership that we're looking at here?
Mr. Green?
No, this is this type of compensation is very, very common. The Trout Unlimited Canada has indeed done several of these kinds of compensation projects, mostly with private industry, not necessarily with municipal governments, but it's a very, very common thing for a municipality or an industry to, for whatever reason, either accidentally or because it's deemed necessary, to damage fish habitat. This compensation is done. What is perhaps unique about this one is the number of agencies that are going to have their finger in the pie. You've got the MNRF, the DFO, the NPCA, the Escarpment Commission. Very, very few other jurisdictions have to deal with all of those.
Okay. Mr. Olson, or Councilor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe I saw Councilor Hildebrand's hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to you, Mr. Green. I believe we're all working to preserve our natural environment. When it comes to our environment, I believe in this case, we probably get one chance to get it right. And I know you referred to a report by Dr. Brandt, but Dr. Brandt is a licensed geoscientist. And you're referring now to collected data from Niagara College and NPCA. Is that also signed off by some professional organization? like a licensed professional?
Well, the NPCA is about as professional as you can get. They have been monitoring this for more than 20 years. They have temperature loggers above and below the dam. Their data is impeccable, and it's freely available online. The NPCA makes it available online. I've been assured by the water quality specialist at the NPCA that if he gets a request, if people can't find the data or don't understand it, he is very willing to talk to them about it. So yeah, I would say that this data is every bit as good as Dr. Brand's, perhaps better, because his is for over a very brief period of time. It doesn't cover the same length of time or as thoroughly as the NPCA data.
The data I seen from Mr. Brandt was for over 20 years, so I consider that over a considerable amount of time. And the NPCA still would have to have the data signed out by some licensed professional. I am a licensed professional. When I sign it, it's my license that I've got on the line. Just having data from an organization doesn't cut it for me. So yes, I will be requesting that data because I have to make sure that I'm making the right decision tonight.
Well, sorry.
I'm not sure that I am.
Well, I think you'll see that the data matches pretty closely with Dr. Brand's. He himself has said that the pond warms the stream. Nowhere has he said that it's a bad idea to do a bypass. It seems to me that even common sense, not being a licensed professional myself, but even common sense tells me that the sun striking a still pond will raise the temperature of that pond, and any water that flows out of it will be warm. I opened my pool the other day, and in 2 days during the heat, it went from 13 degrees to 22. How can a pond that sits still and receives the sun not warm the entire system?
Absolutely. Then it comes down to the data points and the significance on the fish.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to really, you're absolutely right. It comes down to a question of degree. How much is bad? Well, any is bad, and Dr. Brand never says that, oh, this shouldn't be done. All he says is, well, there's a worse one. Well, okay, but this one is bad enough, and an interruption in the source water coming out of Marlene Stewart Street Park, an interruption of a dam and a pond within a kilometer of it bubbling out of the water is detrimental to the entire system. The last remaining cold water stream in Niagara.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor?
Well, the question I have, building a channel around it, I'm not sure what we're going to do to the environment either. So I guess I need more information from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Green, how long has the Cannery Pond been in existence?
Mr.
The dam, I don't have the exact date, but the dam definitely dates from either the very early 1900s or late 1800s. That's the sort of time frame of the cannery itself, and that was, the dam was put in there to service the cannery.
Okay, so in all the over 100 years, it's only started to become an issue in what, the past 20 years?
It's been an issue since it was built. We're only recognizing the issue now. We're recognizing the damage that it does.
Okay.
If we want to have a pristine cold water stream, then dams like that are the most unnatural thing you can imagine. We're trying to restore the balance of nature. We would love to remove that dam, but that's not on. So the best alternative is to bypass it and reconnect the source water to the stream.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Corr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. How many dams are on the stream?
How many dams are on the 12 Mile Creek?
Yes.
I can't give you a number, but I can tell you that there are something like 30 ponds that are on the watershed. So I assume that each one of those has in some way been a dam. Our first project 10 years ago was to mitigate the influence of 3 dams up on Metler Road. These dams created ponds that were deemed to be warming the water by the MNRF and the NPCA. And again, the landowners didn't want to see them removed, so we eventually got permission to put in what we call bottom draw devices on the dam. So instead of the warm water flowing off the surface over the dam, we put in a device that took the cold water from the bottom and sent that down to the next pond and then into the stream, thereby cooling the entire stream. But these kinds of dams are very, very common. At one time, just historically, at one time, there were many, many more. The little village of St. John's wasn't little then, it was bigger than St. Catherine's. But at the time, there were something like 6 or 7 mills, all of them with dammed up water on 12 Mile Creek.
One further question. How many dams are in the Fawn Hill area then?
I would say probably only those 2, St. John's and the Cannery.
And I'm sorry, one other question. How old is the St. John Dam?
Boy, that's a very good question. I don't know. I have no idea.
And great presentation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hahn?
Thank you, through the mayor. Mr. Green, you had mentioned that you're hopeful and it's possible that your organization could be chosen as the project manager. So if you could please speak to, I guess, the qualifications of perhaps yourself and those that would be the project managers on behalf of your organization, please.
Sure. I will not be involved. I have absolutely zero expertise in dam removal or dam bypass. I will be an interested bystander should this come about, and I will certainly volunteer any abilities that I have. Trout Unlimited Canada retains 2 national biologists who are, I can send you their qualifications, their biographies. One national, the other one based in Guelph, the other one in Calgary. The track record of Trout Unlimited is pretty near exemplary. But I do want you to keep in mind that Trout Unlimited will not do this in-house. That as project managers, they will seek out the very best aquatic engineers. They will look for the best contracting and construction people to do the work. And they will oversee it to ensure that it meets their rigorous standards. And then they've got the DFO and the NPCA, et cetera, looking over their shoulder as well.
Okay, and one further question, and that is with regards to the landowner, the property owner of the Cannery Pond. Have you reached out to this individual? And if so, what was the look and feel of that discussion?
Yes, I have. I've talked to Mr. DeCourt. I think he wishes we'd all just go away. He recognizes the value of this. He recognizes the opportunity that we have to spend another municipality's money. He recognizes that this would be a beneficial thing for the entire stream. I think he does not recognize the potential liability of his dam. I'm hoping that the dam is solid, but that will be one of the things that is examined in the process of this. And I know that he is very, very reluctant to see any damage done to the pond. He has said he likes the pond, he likes to see the ducks and the geese on the pond. His quote was, how many apartment buildings have a lovely little pond in the backyard? And I respect that. I can certainly understand his point of view, which is why we have never questioned the idea of dam removal. It's always been bypass.
So was he also then provided with, let's call it evidence, for lack of a better word, with regards to the research and the numbers and the rationale as to why this should be done, as opposed to just it should? He was provided with the information as to why this would be a solid decision.
He has been provided with everything he's asked for, that does not include detailed analyses or monitoring information. Certainly, as we go forward, he is going to be a huge influence on this project. We need to cater to his every wish. It is on his land that it's being done. And any information that he wants by way of justification or by way of when we get around to getting a design and so on. This is all preliminary. He will certainly have final approval on all of them.
Okay, so at this point in time, because it's so very preliminary, if at any point in time he's seeking information and it's not provided or he doesn't agree with it, this could change everything altogether, and then we'd start back at scratch choosing a new project, correct?
Absolutely, I would assume that's the case. I mean, once this is approved, it still is on private property, and he can order us off the property at any time he wants to. That's a danger, no question about it. It's a danger for everybody. It's a danger for our earnest desire to improve this stream. It's also a very real danger for St. Catharines. If they don't get approval and they don't get this done, then they're held up. They can't. The DFO won't let them do the construction that they have to do on Lake Ontario. So. Yeah, this is, you're absolutely right. This is an issue.
Okay, and then last question I wanted to ask. So you mentioned the rationale for not tackling the 20 and Rice, and that boils down to the fact that it is a town issue and it's on town property. However, the actual erosion problem, so although it may stem from the stormwater pond, which is on town property, and then flows underneath regional road, owned by the region, and then comes out, where it comes out though, is where the erosion actually is. Mm-hmm. So that is on obviously two parcels of land that come together, and then there's the stream there, and that's for the erosion issue. So if that is the actual problem and that's not town, then I don't understand the rationale for not tackling that if in fact where the erosion issue is, mm-hmm. If that's not on town property, then how can that be justified that it's a town issue at that juncture? In other words, it's similar to this in that it's on private property at that stage.
I think that the consultant's rationale for abandoning that idea was twofold. One was that the issue, for all that it's on private property, is caused by a facility that is under the management of the town. And secondly, it doesn't soak up enough money. St. Catharines has to spend $250,000. You could gold plate the channel and not spend $250,000 there.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's going to be more than what, it might not be that much, but it's going to be more than I think what we think already at 60 or 70,000. But okay, thanks very much for answering those questions.
I agree with you, by the way. I think 70,000 is going to be tight.
That's not even close. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink.
So just to be clear, at the end of the day, all that we're being asked here is consent for the various agencies to move forward with studies and approvals. We don't have approval over the property owner's land. We're just being asked, like, do we agree to move this project forward through the various conservation and ministries, and then ultimately it's the landowner who's going to be saying yes or no to this project. So we're going to get to the staff report a little bit later, but I applaud staff for the report and the clarity in that report. And, you know, the landowner holds all the cards. We're just asking to move this along to the various levels for approval.
As I understand it, Councillor, it's not even that, and the CAO can address this. I think what you're being asked is to acknowledge that St. Catharines wants to spend $250,000 in Pelham, period, full stop.
Yep. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Stewart, is that your hand I see up? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've got, first I have a comment, and then I have a quick question. My first comment was regarding your comment that Mr. DeCourt has been given all the information he's asked for. But I'm sure that, as the rest of us know, none of us have dealt with this before. So a lot of times you don't know what questions to ask in order to get the information that you really need. So I'm in a way, I find that somewhat misleading, because if you ask for something and that's what you get, it may not be what you need. And then other than that, my question is the St. John's Pond. I think it was referenced as the bottom draw, where they take the water, the cooler water from the bottom. Could that be done with the Cannery Pond?
It has been considered. If there's so many studies that have yet to be done. Again, we are at such an early stage of this. One of the things, I don't want to belabor the technology, but one of the things that has to be done is that 4 piezometers have to be inserted around the Cannery Pond to determine the flow and volume of the groundwater. And once that is determined, then we can make some decisions about whether the pond can regenerate itself through groundwater flow or whether it needs a channel. It is still, I would say, on the table that a bottom draw device could be used here. It is the least preferable of the options, but it is still on the table if nothing else can be done. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Hahn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll make this very quick. Just with regard to consultation with abutting landowners, has there been any reach out, or do you know what the plan will be to reach out to those other folks that their land then adjoins to this land that we're discussing?
Sure, that's a great question. The various agencies that are listed in your documents that the CAO and the solicitor have put together will require us varying degrees of public consultation. Some of them require more than others. Certainly, they all require that abutting properties be notified. At this point, we are still so preliminary. This kind of snuck up on us. It was due to, it was all the media's fault. St. Catharines Standard reported on this when St. Catharines Council passed the compensation. We were not ready. Nobody was ready. All of a sudden, here's $250,000 on the table, and people are asking questions about, well, what's the design look? Well, we don't know. We haven't even thought about that yet. So we're still at that very, very early stage. And to be more specific, to answer your question, the abutting landowners to the west have been notified and are fully in consultation with us. That is, of course, the Trout property and the Nature Conservancy of Canada. We have a very good relationship with them because we work with them on the 2 ponds that they are removing from online in their jurisdiction, in the Trout property. So they work with us on that. So they're very sympathetic. They understand what the situation is. However, as a national not-for-profit organization, they have very strict requirements. We have to go through all kinds of a questionnaire to assure them that this is a worthy project, including how long a stretch of stream will be affected, will Indigenous peoples be involved, will there be public consultation? All of these questions are part of their national form, and they all have to be filled out. So if we intrude on the Lathrop property, if the bypass has to go on the Lathrop property, which is not yet determined, we don't know, then that's going to open that very much for public consultation, because that's part of their mandate, public consultation for sure. If Trout Unlimited Canada gets the contract to do this work, then you can be assured that to the limit of their ability, they will involve the public. It's a commitment of Trout Unlimited Canada to engage the public as much as possible and to get their approval of any project that we do. I do have to caution you that, again, the landowner has the last call. Not every landowner wants the public able to comment on what he does on his property. So within the regulations, adjacent landowners will certainly be notified. Interested parties and organizations will certainly be notified. I can't say whether there will be public meetings. If they are required by one of the permitting organizations, then obviously there will be. If Trout Unlimited gets it, we will hold out for that, but we're a little bit at the mercy of the land.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hildebrand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Green, for your presentation. And again, the question I have is, what is the rush? If all of a sudden it was dropped up by the media at a council meeting, and here we are, we're in our second meeting on this process, what is the rush of getting it approved tonight versus at another meeting a week down the line or 2 weeks down the line?
Well, there are several things that make it a little bit time sensitive. One is that, as I mentioned, these piezometers have to get into the ground yesterday so that we can monitor the flow of the groundwater during the summer months, because that during the low water, and then through the full year until the high water again. If we delay until, let's say, the end of July, then the project is put off for another year. The other real issue is, of course, that the city of St. Catharines development is being held up because the DFO doesn't have a project that they have approved yet. If they decide not to approve this one, then St. Catharines has to go and find another one, and they'll have no trouble doing that, but it's a further delay in their desire to go ahead with their building. So as a, I guess you could put it as a courtesy to a neighboring municipality, it would be best, I would suggest, to do this expediently.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Any other comments? Not seeing anything. I'd just like to add that if this $250 does not get spent in Pelham, and if it ends up going up north to the Saugeen River, it would be a huge crime against conservation in this town or in the region. I just think this council is overthinking this decision. We are giving another municipality, along with all the people all the departments that will be involved, the go-ahead to spend money in the region. And if they don't spend it in the region, as Brian has said, the municipalities will line up in Ontario. This money doesn't have to be spent in Pelham, doesn't have to be spent in the region. It can go, I believe it can either go anywhere in Ontario or anywhere in Canada. Do you know the limitations on that, Brian?
Yeah, it's DFO is a federal agency, so they'll be happy to spend the money in Newfoundland or Northwest Territories or wherever.
Okay.
Wherever there's a project that will restore fish habitat.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, great presentation. One last time, any comments, questions for the presenter? Not seeing any. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and for your excellent question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive the presentation from Brian Green, Trout Limited, Canada, regarding the fish habitat compensation project in 12 Mile Creek for information. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that does carry. And we'll just remove our presenter from the meeting. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item on the agenda, and I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. 1 C-09-2021 regular council minutes, May 17th, 2021, and SC-08-2021 special council meeting minutes for May 31st, 2021. Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that you call for any errors or omissions.
Okay, thank you. After viewing these minutes, Councillor, have any questions or comments? I see Councillor Wink.
So can we separate the approval of the 2 minutes, because the special meeting of May 31st, 21, I did not attend? So I attended the first one, I didn't attend the second one, so I can't approve the second one.
Certainly, I'm happy to divide that if that's what you wish.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. So for the first vote, I will call for the C-09-2021 regular council minutes from May 17, 2021. And I will start the vote with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carried. Then we'll go to the next set of minutes, which is the CS-08-2021 special council meetings for May 31st. I'll start the vote with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink, I think you're yes, thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that also carries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does bring us to your next item on the agenda, which is the request to lift items from the consent agenda. So through you, Mr. Mayor, as council is aware, councillors may request to lift an item from the consent agenda if they wish to amend the resolution presented. If councillors simply just wish to comment on an item, they are not required to lift. Members of council, if there are any items you wish to lift, please advise.
I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to lift item 8.5.1, the Niagara Regional Plan.
Thank you. Any other desires to lift an agenda item? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Oh, okay, thank you. Before I call this vote, if there were any items that councillors just wish to speak to, now would be the time.
Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, does that include 10.2.3 of the tree maintenance policy, or is that a separate item?
It's a separate item, Councillor. These are just on the consent agenda items.
Items from number 8, all of the items in number 8.
Thank you.
If no one else, I would like to talk to 8.5.2.
Certainly.
And now would be a correct time, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I just see that the town of Fort Erie passed a motion to support the township of Archipelago to have the spraying of a very invasive weed, I guess it's a water plant, throughout Ontario. And it's starting to really clog up waterways. I know in southwestern Ontario, it's a huge problem along Lake Erie shoreline. So I was glad to see that that this is getting some attention, even in this part of the country. And it is, you can see it, and along some of Pelham's roads, I know those patches of it. So it's great to, I think it's a great thing if we can support this, this idea. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Therefore, I do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the June 7th, 2021 Council agenda be received and that recommendations contained therein be approved, save and accept item 8.5.1 as applicable. Mr. Mayor, I would start the vote with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to the lifted items, and Councillor Hildebrandt did lift item 8.5.1, and just for the record, I'll read the original motion into the record. It is, be it resolved that Council receive the Niagara Official Plan Consolidated Policy Report, PDS 17-2021 for information. Through you, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
for discussion.
Councillor Hildebrandt, I take it you wish to speak on this.
Yes, I have an amendment that I'm going, draft amendment that I'm going to propose. In the region's email to the town, they identified they were looking for feedback by July the 2nd. The presentation information from the region in section 6 is entitled, What Happens Next? It's found on page 19 of the very long report. The first part is a decision on the NES, Natural Environment System, is critical to allow the Niagara Regional Plan to move forward. And I believe that's all in the region's council meeting jurisdiction. And I presume the regional councilors are dealing with that. All other sections are provided for information and to receive feedback. And that's what why I lifted this tonight. But because the specific topic that this plan addresses is intensification. As we know, intensification is one of the areas that gets ourselves into all kinds of issues with regards to the intensification in the town specifically. Because right now our intensification target is 40%. And then we're coming to these special communities and having to come up with all kinds of special developments to meet those intensification targets. The new government regulation says the intensification target should be 50%. The new Niagara Region plan is that the intensification for the region should be 56%. My position on this is let's walk before we can run. A 10% increase is already something huge in my mind for us as a municipality to deal with, rather than asking for an extra 6%. Maybe 6% doesn't seem much, but to me, it's a lot. Therefore, my proposed amendment is that the motion be amended to include that the Council of the Town of Pelham supports a provincial intensification target rate of 50% to be reflected in the Niagara Region's new official plan, and that this council for the Town of Pelham requests the Niagara Region consider adopting a 50% intensification target, whereas currently the Niagara Region is considering an intensification target of 56%, and that council directs staff to advise the Niagara Region of this position through written correspondence prior to the July the 2nd, 2021 deadline.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Did you get that full amendment?
I do have it through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any discussion on this amendment? First, Mr. CAO.
Council, before you maybe fully explore this, I'd like to respectfully suggest that 2 weeks from today is an excellent time to consider this idea. If you rewind, I don't know the exact date, but Council, you brought a motion to have staff come back to you with a report on specific future growth numbers and intensification targets, et cetera. Ms. Weens and her team have been working on that report for, I'm going to say 2 months, roughly that, plus or minus a bit. And it's just about, and it's going to be on your agenda at the next meeting on the 21st. I think you probably want to read that document. You may well want to go exactly where Councillor Hildebrand's suggesting. It's not for me to tell you otherwise, but you're about to get the results of a couple months' work by someone that you specifically requested for that directly touches on this. So I certainly don't want to discourage you from having a robust discussion here, but there's another shoe to drop, which is information you've specifically requested and we've worked on and touches on this. So I really think this would be better 2 weeks tonight.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. CAO. Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that was going to be my question. I was aware that there was a report imminent. Within 2 weeks, in my opinion, is imminent, and I think we should wait for that. I think there's the more information we have, the better off we are when it comes to decisions like this. And I certainly think that I imagine there's also the possibility that our intensification could go down in relation to the rest of Niagara region. So I suppose that it's worth knowing a lot more about this question before we vote on it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kaur?
Yes, I fully agree with my colleague that 2 weeks is not a great, length of time, and we could sit on this and get all the information before we make a decision.
Councillor Hildebrand, would you like to amend the amendment, perhaps?
Well, maybe we can just stay the amendment or motion till the next council meeting.
Okay, I'll check with the clerk. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. This was moved by Councillor Hildebrand. He most certainly can withdraw, and then we can just look at the original motion if Councillor Hildebrand would like to withdraw at this time.
That's acceptable to me. I agree, we need all the information we can, but I just wanted to make sure that this is highlighted, because to me, this is a big issue in the town. And if we don't address it and advise our planning department that that's what this council believes the direction should be, I want to make sure that they know what this council desires. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we would have the movers, Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Wink, and we're going to be looking at the original motion which was presented, which is, be it resolved that Council receive the Niagara Official Plan Consolidated Policy Report, PDS 17-2021 for information. Unless there's any other debate, I'll call the vote with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to your next item on the agenda, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2021-0101 Health and Safety Policy Updates, and that Council approve policies S101-12 and S101-13 as amended, and that Council approve the following new policies: employee injury, illness and incident reporting, and employee accommodation policy. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, any questions or discussions on this report? Not seen any.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk?
I would start the vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart. Sorry, Counselor Stewart, I think you were muted.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt. Oh, I apologize. Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin,
Yes.
and that carries. Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Counselor Stewart, seconded by Counselor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0105 Clerk's Accommodation Policy Update Report for information, and that Policy S100-13 Accommodation Policy be submitted for Council approval at their next regular meeting, and that Council repeal Policy S201-02 Accessibility Policy to be repealed and replaced with Policy S100-13 Accommodation Policy upon approval. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for debate.
Okay. Any discussions or questions on this policy? See none, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. I'll start the vote with Counselor Kaur,
Yes.
Counselor Olson,
Yes.
Counselor Stewart,
Yes.
Counselor Wink,
Yes.
Counselor Hahn,
Yes.
Counselor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin,
Yes.
and that carries. Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item. I do have a motion put forth by Counselor Stewart, seconded by Counselor Olson. Be it resolved that Council receive report number 2021-0097 Tree Maintenance Policy, and that Council approve the proposed revisions to Public Works Tree Maintenance Policy S802-01. Mr. Mayor, for you for discussion.
Okay, thank you. On this policy, oh, I see Councilor Olson, your hand is up.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I regard this as an extremely important report. I think climate change is going to be a topic, probably one of the largest topics for the next century. And I think we have an opportunity here to establish something really important for our town, which is characterized by some the wonderful treescape that we have here. And as we've seen in the past, when we set our targets high, we tend to achieve them and our employees achieve them. I would like to see us join an organization, and I'm going to suggest a couple of ones: Tree Canada, North American Native Plant Society, one of those to achieve a gold medal for our town with the processes we're going to put in place here. So I have a couple of questions for Mr. Marr. First of all, your tree inspection. Is it your intention now to put the publicly owned trees on a database, or is this going to fit into our asset management database? How do you intend to do that?
To you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, 100%. That's the goal of the department. This is a project that we've been looking to get in place for some time now. I'm glad to say that we actually have started the project with resources that we've been able to repurpose from the MCC during the COVID lockdown. So we're able to redeploy some of those resources and have started actually doing an inventory of the trees using GIS software and mapping that out as part of our asset management plan. So that's something that we're definitely interested in doing. It's important for the town to have that information so that we're able to better manage our tree management maintenance program. And so that's the answer to that question. Yes, that is something that we want to see through to fruition and actually have started the program.
Thank you again to Mr. Marr. On section 1 here, D, it's the available planting spaces we're talking about. Would that available planting spaces take into account things like soil structure, texture, soil depth, drainage, nutrients and pH levels and that type of thing? Because it seems to me that's the time when we start to collect that data and know what kind of trees we want to plant in certain places.
Mr. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. Are you dealing with the staff report?
Yeah, I'm looking at the staff report. It says this is tree inventories and inspections, and it's under inventories, and the inventory is available planting spaces in the town.
Correct. So exactly, we'll have the capabilities to map out planting areas, and more importantly, we'll be able to track, catalog all of our trees with respect to the diameter of the species, the condition, link inspection reports to those, and that data and information will be available through our GIS system and our asset management system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Meyer. Again, another question. Where we're talking about planting trees and boulevards, presumably this would take into account things like drought tolerance, salt tolerance, and urban tolerances, including things like compaction and pollutions, how they stand up to pollution. And if I go through the list of problems that we face with our trees and our boulevards, it looks to me like it's a very narrow number of trees or number of species that fit into this, just because of the salt pollution that we have. And am I right or wrong in saying that, or does it limit what we can pick out for trees?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in our engineering standards, we do have what species are preferred by the town with respect to publicly planted trees in the boulevards. And yes, there are some areas where some trees are more tolerant and do better, and that's all built into the selection of the trees during the replanting process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kaur.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just make a comment. I think we've this is an excellent report. Now, is this an opportunity now to have some more consultation with interested parties in the community? And I'll just leave that as a question for the rest of council, and excuse myself from Councillor Kaur for interrupting him. So,
okay, thank you.
That's not a problem, sir.
Okay, Councillor Kaur.
Yes, we're on the topic of trees. To the director, how's the gypsy moss spraying? And then I know it woke me up one morning, so I am getting a lot of concerns from residents saying that some parts of their it's very bad. Infestation is very bad in their neighborhoods.
Mr. Mark.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, we've successfully completed the second spray. Again, we targeted the areas that were presented to council as part of our 2021 spray program. We have our consultant who's still retained. They'll be conducting a follow-up on those sprays, and staff will be bringing a report to council, which will basically indicate the effectiveness of those sprays. Ryan, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add at this point in time.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The consultant will do a defoliation survey, and we'll provide I have received a number of complaints about gypsy moths in some areas outside the spray zones. So that will be part of that report that we're looking at bringing, I think, in August.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to Director Marr. Yeah, just 2 points, I guess. Number one, and this perhaps takes a little bit of a lead from Councillor Olson, and that is, I'm just wondering if anybody reached out to Mr. Kerr, Kevin Kerr. He had made a presentation to us probably, well, a long time ago, probably over a year and a half ago. He spoke about gypsy moth and the health of trees in general, and which leads to my second question, and that is something I brought forward actually, I think in the first I don't know, few months of becoming a councillor, and that is the types of trees we're using and the correlation to some of our biggest pests. So obviously the most obvious one is gypsy moth. Gypsy moth, apparently caviar to gypsy moth is an oak tree. So in my neighborhood, we have young oak trees, and we've been spraying probably 4 or 5 times already in the past month and a half. My tree in the front had caterpillars, and I'm watching it daily, but it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that we would plant something that is so highly desirable by our pests. So not to say that I never want to see another oak tree planted in the town of Pelham, but I think that needs to be addressed with the, the ebb and flow of this being a pest in our area. Perhaps in 5 or 10 more years, we'll have a completely different pest. It's hard to say, but it just is really sad to see new trees being put in that are just dead within, 2.5 years, and then we're replanting them again. And often before, sometimes it's right after the town assumes that property. So now it's on the taxpayer to replace those trees. And that's a huge expense, and it just, it's ugly to see dead trees. So I just think that there should be a little bit of work done in understanding the trees that we're planting and the pests that are out there that are the most desirable of those that are going to be inhaled by those creatures. And then also too, reaching out to somebody like Mr. Kerr, who is an expert, and he's a local. He's already volunteered time to speak to us at one point in time. Perhaps we should be reaching out, if we haven't already, to see what he has to say about these kinds of issues.
Mr. Marr?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. In the development of this policy, staff looked at various municipalities, a lot of those in Niagara region, and looked at best practices and tried to model what's worked well in those other municipalities. I know, and Ryan can comment, I believe we used a lot of the details from Niagara on the Lakes forestry management policy that they have in place. We didn't specifically reach out to any one individual, but looked at best practices in other municipalities. When it comes to tree selection, obviously, yes, the gypsy moth does like the oak trees. Part of the policy and part of our mandate is to pick species, different species, so there's not specifically one tree species that's on one particular road, and try to have some variety. Because you're right, you don't know what the next infestation is going to bring or what else is going to come up, and try to build some. The idea is to select trees that are going to provide some variety and build some resiliency into the street trees and the urban forest.
I would just really encourage us to reach out to local folks like Mr. Kerr and just get some input from him. He is an expert in his own right with regards to this, and he's been very helpful in the past. And I'm sure there's other folks as well, and not just single him out, but that's one person who has presented to us. So I just think it's really important to address that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. In your report, the very first sentence, you prefaced the local residents group, the Pelham Tree Conservation Society. It's not a committee of council, but has there been any input from the Pelham Tree Conservation Society for the revisions to this policy?
Mr. Marr?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We hadn't had any meetings with this group, but in essence, their guideline that they established back in 2000 forms the backbone of this policy. A lot of the items and the issues that they raised as part of their guideline back in 2000 has been adopted in this new policy. And that's part of the reason why staff are bringing this new policy to council for approval, is because the last policy and the current policy we have in place is very vague in a lot of areas and doesn't provide a lot of detail. And the policy that we're bringing now in front of council takes a lot of the ideas from that 2000 guideline and incorporates that into a new policy that hopefully council will endorse.
Councillor?
So would it be prudent to go back to them at this point in time, or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if that's, well, I see the CAO's hands up, but I mean, that would be would be some option that would be available to council if you wish to open it more up to the public. But we feel that, you know, we've incorporated a lot of the things that important aspects that they had as part of that guideline into this new policy.
Thank you. Before I let the CAO speak, I was kind of hoping that one of the councillors would pass a motion. I don't think I can do it as the chair, that we defer this for 2 weeks so that we do have time for the public to delve into this report and report back to council. Anyway, Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Your Worship. The policy as presented to you this evening does reflect the thoughts of Mr. Cook, Mr. Marr, our supervisor of beautification, our forester, or arborist, I think perhaps the title is, myself as well. But I would submit to you, council, that if we were not in the pandemic, in the ordinary course, this would have been brought to you in a meeting that would be labeled policy, and you would not be in a position to pass it the night you received it. And that happens for 2 reasons. Firstly, so that the public can see the work that comes before us and then has a couple of weeks to ask to be delegates or send letters in, etc. And secondly, so that you yourselves can turn your mind to it for a couple of weeks. And again, you have to function as your own, you know, Senate, your own sober second thought kind of thing before you pass any legislation. So only because of the pandemic is this presented to you in a format where you could pass it the same night. But for that, you'd be unable to even consider passing it tonight. So because of that, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever if you wish to defer this for 2 weeks, for 4 weeks, well, we don't have a meeting in 4 weeks. It's 2 weeks or it's the end of July. Madam Clerk can help with the specifics of the date. I think it's around the 27th or so.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. The next meeting is June 21st. The following meeting is July 26th.
26th. Very good. So certainly that causes no harm to the work. The work does reflect staff's thoughts, but it really, if you defer it, there's a chance for the public to have more input. We did try to incorporate things we'd heard from the public. We certainly had a number of complaints over the last couple of years, and we looked at those and sort of examined them as part. So those things weren't ignored, but as far as a formal consultation, no.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just a note here. The trees that are the most drought resistant, most salt tolerant, and most urban tolerant is the white oak, which, as Councillor Hahn points out, is the pièce de résistance for the gypsy moth. I was wondering if we shouldn't have an overall tree canopy target for our town, such as some of the other places have a target of 75% tree canopy. Others are 50%, but just I think you can calculate that from air photos. And you know, I was just wondering if we shouldn't have something like that, because this presents an opportunity to change, to make a big change in the way we are operating and doing things, and it's a time for people who are interested, and there's a lot of interest in it, to be consulted. And as the mayor said, I was prepared to move that we defer this report for 2 weeks to allow for public input.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wink?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I read a report on gypsy moths in Hamilton, and through that report, they have a target of 30% coverage there, and obviously it can't be done overnight, but the coverage, I believe, is at around 21 point something percent. I assume that includes private lands, whereas this policy only pertains to public lands, and we're not dictating to the residents that they've got to put in trees. So there may be some type of consideration if you wanted to do something like that.
Thank you. Councilor Hildebrand, you haven't spoke to this yet. Go ahead.
First of all, to the motion that Councilor Olson made, I will second that to defer this. But I do have some comments with what I'd like to make. First of all, last September, October, I was called to Saffron Meadows, the stormwater management pond, because there was really no trees put in there by the developer, or whatever he put in there were insignificant, or they all passed away. So they put in some trees, but basically what you see there now are twigs. And I was called over there again today. And obviously I have no thought that these things ever meet our standards. I mean, if they're 3 feet high and 1/4 inch in diameter, I can't believe we're allowing our developer to put in that level of trees, and we're accepting them in our developments. But let me get to the policy, because that's what we're addressing tonight. The policy, as I see it, just my executive summary of the policy as I read it. You tell me if there's an emergency, you're going to get at it as soon as possible. You tell me if there's a non-emergency, you're going to get it within a month or two. You tell me that within 7 years, you're going to inspect, prune, and trim every public tree. You're going to establish a tree inventory and data management, and all you're asking me for is $15,000 for a student to help you out in the summer. Is that my executive summary correct?
Mr. Mark?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to answer the councilor's question briefly. I would also like to get some comment and feedback from Mr. Cook. He's the manager of the department, and maybe able to give more information with respect to the nuts and bolts of the operation. But I do know when we say that we're going to get to 1/7 of or hit all the trees within 7 years, that doesn't necessarily mean we're pruning every tree. We're looking at blocks throughout the town, and that's where our program for tree maintenance and pruning will be focused on. If you do recall, we previously had a tree maintenance contract, which was 100% hourly. In this past year, we changed the format of that contract, so now it's more of an itemized contract. We still have the hourly items in there in case of emergency when we can react and get our contractor to react quickly. But the focus and the idea is that we look at targeted areas within the town, develop a program, an area to focus on, and that's where we would do that throughout 7 years. We would get through every area of the town. Ryan, do you want to make any further comments?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, when we were developing the policy, we really tried to look at what we could actually accomplish with very few additional resources. So we are able to get through a 7-year cycle with the way our new contract is structured, and with the staff complement we have. The one falling down issue that we currently have in forestry is that we didn't have an additional staff member to complete the inventory and the inspections on those cycles. The inspection is really, the inventory and the inspection are really important to the overall program. It allows you to kind of plan a little bit better. Right now, we have a basic idea of how many boulevard trees or municipal street trees that we have within the blocks that we're going to focus on. There, it's about 3,600 trees. There's somewhere. Our new contract is about, if you design the contract in blocks and in stages for pruning, it's about $150 per tree. So you're looking at just over $500,000 to prune all 3,600 on a 7-year cycle, $77,000 somewhere in there. This is all back of a napkin math to it right now, but that fits well within our $125,000 maintenance budget. So we did really take a look at what we could do and then find the balance between maintenance that we needed to do and then public expectation of what we're being asked. We're receiving somewhere between 400, 420 tree maintenance PSRs, phone calls, and requests per year. So 220 working days, you're getting 2 of these things done a day plus whatever else you're doing. So, and that's unplanned work. Never mind the planned work and the pruning cycles and the things that we want to do, because that's where your value is planning and doing this stuff. So yeah, we feel very confident that we're able to get through the whatever we put in prescribed in this policy with our current staff, aside from, like I said, 6 months of a summer student driving around doing inspections and inventory.
Thank you very much. I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'll be looking forward to that number come September when we actually set the budgets, because basically you're not asking me for any equipment. You're not asking me for anything other than $15,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I have one for the director. Does Pelham? On my last time on council, I believe we had a policy in Public Works that for every tree that you guys took out, that the policy was to replace 2. Is that policy still in effect? And do we indeed follow that policy? Mr. Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So indirectly, it's in our current policy. That's kind of the level of service we've been providing. I think last year we removed somewhere around 14, 15 trees and planted in the high 30s. Maybe it was more like 18 trees removed. But we're almost at a 2-to-1 right now. And I know that that's the region policy as well, to replant 2 trees for every tree removed. And that's in fact what this new policy lays out, is that we will be committed to replant 2 trees for every tree that's removed.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I thought it was already in a policy. I saw it in the in this one that's being put forward. Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, I see Councillor Wink.
Yeah, just a comment. If we're looking for public feedback, I don't think 2-week turnaround time would suffice, and I would suggest that if we're going to defer this for public comment, that it would come back to us for the July meeting.
Okay, Councillor Olson, it's your motion. Your thoughts?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree with Councillor Wink. I think that to have a meaningful conversation with the public, I think it should be extended.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Hildebrand, you seconded the motion. Are you okay with the extension?
Absolutely. The more time, the better.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor. So if we're going to have this this extra time, a couple questions then. Number one, I would like to see some consultation with the local expert, as I mentioned earlier, as well as perhaps even an arborist who does this for a living. And number two, if we are going to ask for public input, how are we going to ask for public input? We can't rely on the few dozen people that may be watching us right now. Most of the town doesn't actually tune in to this. So we need to rely on putting that into a paper or on our website or something of that nature.
Mr. CAO?
We introduced Bang the Table software, which is now our prime way of interfacing with the public, particularly during COVID. That's been really effective in getting commentary and getting opinion, survey data, opportunities for people to really interact with our work product. And this is a dynamite opportunity to engage with that. I'm sure we'll also manage some media advertising. So I can assure you we'll do something fairly robust.
In addition to
multiple platforms.
But also in addition to experts as well. So public input, but in addition to experts who do this for a living, right? Therese?
Again, to reiterate, there are several experts on staff. We already employ those people. We have a forestry department in beautification. It is staffed by qualified people. They've been involved. The work product before you is in fact highly professional. If members of the public happen to also be those professionals want to interact, they'd be very welcome to, but you do have very good professional advice before you.
So we have multiple arborists on staff?
No, we have one. But we have several people who've been doing this for decades, and the tree canopy is excellent because we have several people who've been doing this for decades quite successful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CAO. Thank you, Councillor. Obviously, this will also be on the town website, and I'm sure we will get it in the local press, I would think. I know at one time we had certain individuals that wanted council to form a public committee with public residents on it. This COVID being the way it is, this is great. Now they have 6 weeks that people can go over the policy as it is and get a hold of either councillors, myself, staff, and make recommendations. So I think it's great that we extended it, and I think that anybody who's interested in this report will find their way to it, and will make their comments known. Any other questions, comments on this? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a motion put forward by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt, and this is to refer the report. And it is be it resolved that council refer the report back to staff, and that staff bring the report back to council by July 26th, 2021. Just looking for any discussion on that?
I just want to get clarification, if I can, from the CAO. Mr. CAO, we're not really referring it back to staff, but is that a correct wording?
Your Worship, what I would anticipate happening is we have something that staff, after 6 months of work, think is appropriate, but it's a starting point. We're going to interact with the public on this topic in several different ways. We'll take that feedback and we'll give you a summary document of comments, suggestions, areas of concern, that sort of thing. And that will let you decide if any amendments are needed or if you can support and endorse the policy as presented. So we'll bring back the document and then feedback and suggestions and ideas, and also identify where most of the concerns were, what areas, if any, had the most concerns, and therefore you can efficiently focus your attention on any amendments that you see fit.
Thanks. So is that wording correct then, to refer it back to staff? Are you happy with those words?
We can work with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there's no other comments, I'd start this vote with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we will move on to our next item on the agenda. And that is item 10.2.4. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0104 Meridian Community Center arena advertising rates, and that the following arena advertising fees effectively immediately be included in the Town of Pelham fee guide. Ancipiter Arena, on ice $750 per ice season/year, boards $1,000 per year. Dublin Insurance Arena, on ice $750 per ice season/year, boards $800 per year. ice resurfacing $2,000 per side/year, and that the advertisers are solely responsible for payment and supplies of artwork for boards and textile logos that are to be placed on the ice, and that the existing advertisers which sign new 3-year advertisements with the town of Pelham be provided with a 10-month exemption from fees due to facility closure due to COVID, September 2021 to July 2022, and that new advertisers be granted exemptions of fees for the remainder of 2021, and that staff be directed to amend the fees and charges bylaw to reflect these new fees. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, after reading the report, any questions, comments? And I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, so a few comments. Firstly, I concur with the fact that we shouldn't be charging anyone for a full year. I think we may even find it difficulty for people coming out of COVID. Businesses coming out of COVID into next year have difficulty advertising at those prices. The prices that are being put out, have we compared that to what was being charged by the junior Bs? Is this consistent, or have we increased those numbers?
And who has the answer? Ms. Van Ravensway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have compared, as well as we've compared pricing across the region with other municipalities, and these are in some cases a little lower, and in other cases comparable.
Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, one further comment. It seems like on ice is cheaper than doing the boards. However, if I'm a spectator at a hockey rink, what I'm going to be looking at is on ice, and I can't see half of the boards. So I just question why the on ice is cheaper than the advertising on the boards.
Ms. Van Ravensway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when it comes to the exhibitor arena, the ice surface is only in for normally non-COVID for approximately 8 months out of the year. So it is a less, you have less time to experience the advertising.
Yep.
And the Doulaban insurance, that is what was charged in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, I know we had several in-camera discussions with regards to this subject and with regards to where we stand legally with all this. And I don't know that that was ever brought to a conclusion. And I thought we were going to get a report prior to coming up with any resolution of what our plan going forward was.
Mr. CAO?
Well, they are related, however, separate topics. You can only consider fees and services in public. Ergo, this is a public report and a public discussion and debate on the merits and what appropriate levels and rates ought to be, etc. Councillor Hildebrand is correct. There is a related issue which remains subject to closed meeting privilege, and work continues on that on another front, led by a different staff member. So, although Ms. Van Ravensway and I are certainly involved. So there will be a future upcoming report, but regardless of what it says, a majority of a properly constituted council has to be the ones who make a decision as to what rates ought to be charged, regardless of any issues on who and how and anything else that may impact, but is conceptually separate. So 2 tracks, and this is the public track with general fees for advertising for everyone. I hope that addresses the question.
So basically, my question is, that other track does not influence the decision we're making tonight. That's all I just wanted to clarify.
You can make this decision safely without guaranteeing any sort of outcome or foreclosing on any sort of outcome on the other track.
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the vote, I would begin with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, that does carry. That brings us to our next item on the agenda, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2021-01207 tax collection and registration process, and that Council directs staff to resume normal tax collection processes, including registering tax arrears certificates against properties with tax arrears in excess of 2 years. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay. After reading the report, any councillor have questions or comments? Councillor Wink.
So just a comment for council's information. Seldom does the town have to sell a property for tax sale. Generally, a property that has a mortgage registered against it, the mortgagee will pay the taxes to protect their interests and proceed to deal with property owners for collection on their own. So seldom would we ever get into a position for a tax sale.
Okay. Thank you for that, councillor. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'm wondering, it said can register tax arrears against it. Is that after 2 years? Is that standard, or is this a change?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this is standard. It's not a change. We have to follow the municipal act.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess a question that I might have is, are there other municipalities in the region or provincially perhaps, obviously the region you're more familiar with, that are not doing this because of COVID and waiting, whether it be 6 months or another year? Could you address that, please?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, under the consultation of this report, we have checked with the other 11 municipalities. 6 have resumed the registration process. 2 have postponed the registration process until the COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted, and 3 municipalities have not made a decision on how to proceed. So if you look under the analysis section, this is a long process. I mean, the actual registration, to contact Real Tax that does the registration won't happen until January 1st of 2022. It doesn't happen right away. So this is just for us to get council's approval for us to move forward with the registration, the next 6 months, in light of what we're going through with the COVID. So 6 of the municipalities are moving forward with registrations, and a lot of the municipalities in the province as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Not seeing any. I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the vote, I'll begin with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this does carry. That does bring us to our next item on the agenda. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2021-0102 fence variance 151 Highway 20 East, and that council approve the requested 15-foot high noise barrier fence variance at 151 Highway 20 East in the town of Pelham. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on this, on the fence variance? And I see Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief. I know the fire chief has been directly involved in this because of the residents and the location and all this. Is this approval of a 15-high fence going to satisfy the residents in the rear of the car wash, or is this just another thing and then they're not going to be happy with this noise barrier?
Mr. Fire Chief?
Mr. Mayor, well, nothing's 100%. I mean, they could come back, but this is not a fence per se. This is a noise barrier, very similar that you see along the highways, our 406 along the QEW. They've installed them in a number of other locations in some other car washes in Welland. They're steel and cement structures, and they're built primarily to block out noise. And I can't guarantee you that this is going to keep the residents quiet, but I think that, you know, working with the owners and taking this measure is going to solve the problem.
Councilor Hildebrand?
Let me just make a comment with regards to that. It's great. When I first got married and got out of school, I was living on a second floor beside the Queen E by an overpass. And yes, the Queen E has great big high fences, but guess what? Over 15 feet high, that noise just, it was like you were by the highway. There was no difference between the noise there and the highway. So I'm not sure whether the property's backing this or 2 stories or what they are. That noise is going to be over top of the fence if that's what we're trying to address.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Weens, would they require a building permit to put up this fence? I'm thinking in terms of foundation, design, and wind load, because this is quite a piece of structure that we're talking about putting up.
Ms. Weens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have consulted with the chief building official on this matter, and this is not a designated structure under the Ontario Building Code, so it doesn't require a building permit.
Councilor Olson?
Thank you, Ms. Weens, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I've gone down there quite a few times and sat and talked with residents and business owners, and I don't think we're as far apart as we think we are on the resolution to this. I do have a couple of comments about the owner of the building and everything, and I've never met her, so I can't be accused of any kind of favoritism here, but if I was to meet her, I would certainly acknowledge and appreciate 50 years of business in our town and founding member of the Rotary Club. That's a fine record of service, and I want to mention that. The idea of the bylaw being some kind of a preference thing, I mean, our bylaws enforcement is based on something like tolerance, compromise, patience, and eventually compliance. So I think our bylaw has done a great job there. But these kind of problems with noise and things have been solved a million times already. I think that looking at the equipment and the gear and the people that operate that business, I think if they sat down with a real strong problem-solving technique, they would pretty soon find out that the noise is in the blowers. It's probably in the speed of the blades going around, which are probably some kind of a approaching some kind of a supersonic speed. I think you could break down the whole process, starting with the doors, the blowers, and find the solution just by tuning up the machine. The fence that's being proposed and pictured in the diagram is doing something totally different than what we're expecting here. Those fences are at right angles to the source of the sound. They're not at 180 degrees. And we're talking about a 15-foot fence on top of a 5-foot grade. And I think that changes far too much of the community in terms of community aesthetic. I think there's also a trail option there. I'm going to call it the trail option because the Steve Bauer Trail goes right by there, and I think there's probably some kind of a natural solution there. There's the Steve Bauer Trail has no trees in that area. Right behind the car wash, there's options for two rows of trees, and there's even options for a third row of trees in the V-shaped boulevard in front of the car wash. So I'm going to be voting no for that for all those reasons. I don't think this is a precise enough solution. I don't think it gives enough chance for the owners to make the improvements. I think there's far too many variables. We haven't even gone through 4 seasons yet. We've gone through, I guess, 2 and a bit of 1 and a bit of 2, I guess. So we still haven't gone through summer, and that's where you're going to find the greatest number of variables in terms of sound transmission. So for all those reasons, I'm going to be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wink.
So just to rebut this a little bit, and I've been receiving all sorts of complaints from the residents, and I passed along with staff. And the residents are saying we haven't been doing anything, but staff have been working very diligently with the property owner on this. For example, the entrance has been changed. The entrance used to be closer to Highway 20, and the back of where all the blowers are was at the back of the building. They've changed the entrance now to from the back of the building, and the blowers are at the front of the building. They're keeping the doors down at this point to mitigate the noise of the blowers. So the noise is facing towards as much to Highway 20 as possible. So they are working with staff. If we're putting up trees along Steve Bauer Trail and then on boulevards, deciduous trees won't work because this is a 4-season operation. It's not just spring, summer, fall. So the noise will be there in the winter time. In addition to this, this car wash was in operation previously. So this is an issue that the owners have had, like the residents have had before. So this isn't something that's new. It's once the car wash stopped operating as a car wash for a few years, we didn't end up having any problems. I look at the fence as an opportunity. The only other thing that I would suggest is perhaps there's a way to mitigate the hours of operation. Hours of operation are from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night. If we can squeeze that a little bit to 8 to 10, it may help appease the residents somewhat. So I wouldn't mind seeing that included in our recommendations.
Thank you. Before I go to any other councils, I would like to say that I also have been inundated with several emails starting, whether it be last November, January, And these same residents they wanted a wall. They went back to 1988 when the first site plan was approved by the town. Supposedly there was supposed to be a fence built then. For whatever reason, the fence option wasn't enforced, and perhaps planning can verify that. But whatever, they've accused the town of not doing anything, favoritism, what have you. I think this fence, if we do the, it's not us putting it up. We allow the owner to spend the money, put the fence up. You can plant trees on the other side, on the road side of that fence. You can put vines along it. It disappears. It's like anything else. Once it gets built, it fits into the landscape, and you don't notice it. I also would like to ask our town lawyer. I see that she is attending this meeting. I know I've received lots of emails that our town, bylaw, we're not enforcing the bylaw. I was wondering, first of all, I've heard from the CAO that the town is not in the business of putting businesses out of business. I was wondering if there's any aspect of the legal situation here that you would like to comment on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, as a sort of broad general legal proposition, municipalities have a lot of discretion in terms of bylaw enforcement. And that includes decisions about whether or not to proceed with enforcement, provided that there is a reasonableness and good faith in that conduct. So that's sort of the first piece in terms of the law that might guide any kind of any subsequent steps in this matter. And then a related piece is that if somebody's challenging a municipality's decision not to enforce a bylaw, that person must demonstrate some kind of bad faith or unreasonable conduct on the part of the municipality before the court will intervene. So that's ground one. And then there's a further general principle that applies where a person or group claims that a lack of enforcement creates to them a risk of physical or economic harm. And if that's the allegation, then in order for the municipality to be held responsible, there has to be some kind of a special legal relationship between the municipality and the group that claims to be affected. And again, speaking very generally, bylaws do not generally give rise to that kind of special legal relationship because they're typically passed for the benefit of the general public as a whole, as opposed to for the benefit of individual citizens, individual residents. So in the absence of a special relationship being created by a bylaw, there's also the possibility that a relationship can arise from interactions between a municipality and its residents, but that's very rare in the context of bylaw administration. So those are some general comments on the law that might be applicable to this situation.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Corr?
Yes, I had a discussion with the owner, and I'm going to be honest, she went through hell last week, and I don't think it was fair to her and what she went through, and she's trying to do her best, and I really concurred with what Councillor Olson said. She's an outstanding business person in our community, and she's trying to solve this problem to the best of her abilities. And when I had the discussion with her, she hired probably the best contractor in the Niagara region. That's Tom Rankin. And I guarantee you that fence will be in all specs, and I think it will help in some of the noise. It's never going to go away. And you know, to say that, you know, it's going to disappear, it's never going to disappear. But she's working very hard to resolve this issue, and you could give her, you know, we should all give her some credit for that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chief Limburner. The noise bylaw, is there any kind of standard in there for decibel ratings for noise, you know, being to the point where it's obnoxious to neighbors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, our noise bylaw doesn't speak to any measuring levels. It's the point of reception, and it's whatever the complainant perceives as annoying or disturbing or so forth. But if I can add to just build on Councillor Corr's comment, is that the owners of this property have done everything we've asked them to do. They've dealt with us in good faith, you know, and they've really worked hard at doing this. And it's just, and I really feel that it's not a fence. This is a sound barrier that's being installed by a professional, you know, contractor, one of the largest contractors in Niagara that actually do this type of work along the highways. They install these as part of their business. So it's going to be done as it's going to be properly installed. It'll be engineered, and I really feel that it will mitigate this to a point where it'll be acceptable on both parties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? I guess, so here's a question. So let's say we pass this amendment tonight, and so the owner, that gives the owner the right to build it. But if in the meantime something else happens, they don't have to build it. Whether they fine-tune their fans, as Councillor Olson has stated, or something else comes up, it just gives him a card in his hand that, okay, we've tried everything, the citizens are not happy, let's go the fence option. But it doesn't necessarily, and I guess I'm asking, let's go back to the town lawyer, Ms. Drayton. It gives him the right to build it, but if something comes up that it's not deemed necessary, he doesn't have to build it, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, as I understand it, the variance being sought is simply permissive, permitting the structure to be built. I don't think it imposes a mandatory obligation to do so, but as I understand it, all indications are that the property owner does intend to proceed in an effort to mitigate the noise.
Yeah, okay, great. I think that might be just a little point to consider, but I definitely will be voting in favor of this for sure. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion in addition to this motion that we change the car wash time of operation from currently it's 7 till 11 to 8 till 10.
Okay, first of all, is there a seconder for that? I mean, before we ask for the seconder, Mr. CAO.
Mr. Cribbs, you can't second.
Go ahead.
I had a vote. No. Perhaps, Councillor Wink, you might consider asking staff for a report on that issue, and we can provide you with some analysis about options and implications. That would be worth exploring, but there are some nuances that I think you would want teased out.
Thanks for your guidance on that.
Okay, so you are withdrawing the motion then, Councillor Wink?
No, I'd like a staff report on the hours of operation for car washes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cribbs, is that narrowed it down to car washes? Is that fine?
Well, I think Councillor Corr might be about to second that. Yes. Maybe I should speak for him.
Okay.
In that case, we'd be most happy to comply with that. We'll probably deliver it to you in two parts. There's probably some legal advice you'd want to take enclosed, but we'll come back. I think we could do that within about, well, it is summer. maybe for August. Would that be acceptable?
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, could I chime in here for just one sec?
Yep, go ahead, Chief.
This is a good opportunity for us to amend the overall noise bylaw because there's a few other things that we need to fix in it. So rather than maybe just do a specific report talking about this car wash, that if you give us the opportunity to amend the bylaw, noise bylaw overall.
Councillor Wink, do you want to put that in the motion also?
That's fine, and I don't mind extending it a little bit further, Mr. Krebs.
So a noise bylaw is a half-year proposition and will require a lot of public consultation. In fairness, both the chief and Ms. Sturton have flagged it as something that needs work and attention. And I think it will become if it is the will of council, it will become a large item on your agenda, a major component for the balance of your term. I'd be very happy to write those as separate reports because I think you should consider the car wash item in a timely fashion. The bigger the noise bylaw done properly will take, I want to say half a year, maybe it's 5 months, but it's not 2 and it's not 3. So that would be something we could do by maybe December or, in the early months of the new year when hopefully no one's making noise and the snow dampens everything.
Okay, so then Mr. Krebs, Mr. CAO, so are these two separate issues though? We will continue on, we will vote on the amendment?
In a perfect world, we do it as one as the chief suggests, but there's an issue bothering people right now, and I don't think we do them any justice by waiting 6 months and wrapping it into the longer term fix. So I think they're fairly two topics. We could bring these to you separately.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was hoping you would say that. Any other I'm sorry, Councilor Wink, are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions before we vote on this amendment? Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, I do have an amendment put forth by Councillor Wink, and it would to include the paragraphs and that council directs staff to provide a staff report with respect to options and implications with respect to the car wash operating hours by August 23rd, 2021. For council, and that council directs staff to provide a staff report with respect to amending the town's noise bylaw by December 2021. Councillor Wink, is this correct, or?
So you know what? Give a little bit of latitude to staff, and I would say Q1 2022.
Q1 2022. Thank you. So that would be the amendment, and I do have the mover as Councillor Wink. I would need a seconder.
And that was Councillor Core.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And that would be for the amendment. Is council ready for the vote?
Any other comments? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I would start the vote with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Core.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So the amendment does pass, and then that would bring us to the main motion as amended. Does council want to further discuss, or shall I?
Any further discussions? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Would council like me to read this main motion as amended into the record, or are they satisfied?
I think we're satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll begin the vote again with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Core.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And the main motion as amended passes. Thank you. That does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to unfinished business, and I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0106, supplementary report approval requirements for City of St. Catharines Fish Habitat Compensation Project in the 12 Mile Creek for information, and that council consent to the request from the City of St. Catharines to proceed with a fish habitat compensation project in 12 Mile Creek in the town of Pelham. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for you to discuss.
Okay, and after reading this, any questions, comments on this report? Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you. As I mentioned to the presenter from Trout Unlimited, I would still like to see the data that they say they have from the NPCA and the data from Trout Unlimited. So basically, I'm willing to give consent in principle, but I still would like to see that comparison data because I have the other reports that were referenced and they definitely show another story. So basically, I want to make sure that what I'm looking for is correct.
I will ask the Mr. CAO perhaps. Obviously, we're asked to make a decision tonight. So is it just we make the decision with this stipulation, or do you either vote yes or no?
Watch me talk out of both sides of my mouth. The Municipal Act, this is a very minimalist section, and it's contemplated that the answer is simply yes. That being said, there is nothing in the Act that prohibits you from demanding more information before you say, presumably, yes. I feel it's remiss for me not to point out, it's my information and belief that the Nature Conservancy Canada is going to be doing essentially the identical thing to two ponds, and you don't get to demand data there because it's on private land. And if someone was going to make changes to Crosley, the high school, we don't get to make these inquiries because there's a competent order of government, which is to say a school board, that makes those decisions. And in this case, that report that we wrote for you shows there are 3 levels of government that have to sign off on whatever the eventual application is, and we are not one of them. And if this application were to occur on town-owned land, if we were the ones, we still would not be the approval authority because we are not deemed competent to make this decision. There is no one on town staff who has the appropriate engineering background to sign off on this and decide it is a good idea. I don't think there's anyone on council either. We are not the approval authority for a very good reason. This is not within our skill set or mandate. Now, it is within the skill set and mandate of the provincial government, Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks, within the Conservation Authority, and with the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans, which is why the system is designed to go to those 3. That's the only thing I want to say on behalf of our report. The system is designed to work as it is. I do think you have the right. Now, against everything I've said, I think you have the right to demand more information. The Act doesn't preclose on that, so I think you can do that. But this is certainly outside the norm, and we're demanding information to make a decision that the law doesn't enable us to make, to pass judgment where we're not competent to pass that judgment. I guess that's my only point. But Council, you have the right to proceed as you wish, and you can demand more information.
Okay, Councilor Hildebrand, I see you. Well, let's go to see what the other members think. Councilor Corr?
Yes, I will be supporting. I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this. I just can't give away $250,000 of money to some other municipality. Yes, is it perfect? No, but there's so many check marks, and the biggest check mark is the owner of that pond. He has the right to say yes or no. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councilor. Any Councilor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Hildebrand. I have seen several studies based on the pond, and I'm pretty sure that that you can be directed to them either by Trout Unlimited or myself. I took it upon myself to look into this in quite a bit of detail, and I did find supporting data for it.
Okay. Any, Councillor Wink?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with comments that Councillor Kaur made, and I will also be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the vote on this as it is. Before I do, go ahead, Councillor Hildebrand.
It's not that I'm against the $250,000 in receiving it. I said I would give consent in principle. I don't think it's up to me to have to go get data. The data that I was sent from the individual that was quoted was sent to me. He gave me all the data. I expect Trout Unlimited, if they're wanting to do something, to provide me with the data. To be honest with you, that's how I believe this council should work. I expect people to give me the information. So that's my stance.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Wink?
Yeah, so no disrespect, Councillor Hildebrand, but Mr. Green was saying that there's going to be additional data going to be gleaned going forward, and we need to get this project moving so they could do underground measurements of underground streams around the pond and whatever. So there's all sorts of additional data to be gleaned going forward, and that's not just Trout Unlimited. Like, everyone else is going to be requiring additional data. So all that we're doing is saying, all right, we got to trust that they're going to be doing the appropriate job. And then to Councillor Kaur's comment, at the end of the day, it's got to be to the satisfaction of the property owner. If it's not to the satisfaction of the property owner, it's not going to go anywhere.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions before I call the vote? I'll ask Madame Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the vote begins with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
No.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item on the agenda, and it's presentation and consideration of bylaws. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given a due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw number 4330, 2021, being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into an agreement with the region of Niagara for traffic control signalized maintenance. Bylaw number 4354, 2021, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 1136, 1987 as amended for lands 1409 Station Street and 0 Summersides Boulevard, north side of Summersides Boulevard, east of Station Street, legally described as part of lots 7, 8, 9, 13, and 14, registered plan 717, part of Thorold Township, lot 166 and 167, geographic township of Thorold in the town of Pelham for the agricultural A zone, my apologies, to a site-specific residential 2 R2 306 zone, a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 307 zone, a site-specific residential multiple 1 RM1 308 zone, and an East Fonthill open space EF-OS zone, Mountain View Homes, Niagara Limited, file number AM-08-20. Through you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions or discussion on these bylaws? Excuse me. Madam Clerk, I see none.
Thank you. The vote would begin with Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That does carry. Mr. Mayor, that does bring you to motions and notices of motion. And Councillor Wink does have a motion. Councillor Wink, did you wish to read this into the record?
Yes, I'll read it into the record. Thank you. Whereas the town of Pelham has a development charges bylaw to help ensure that community growth pays for itself. And whereas the 2019 update study resulted in an increase in development charge for outdoor recreation from $1,206 to $1,884 for a single and semi-detached dwelling. And whereas the current development charges bylaw includes a provision of an indoor recreation capital sheet, which must be updated to reflect the current level of services at MCC. And whereas plans to update the study with indoor recreation data based on 2020 data were interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the cost of development charges update study is estimated at $9,000 to $11,000, 90% of which can be funded by the development charges reserve. Now, therefore, staff are to be directed to take all the necessary steps to initiate an update study that is limited to the study of eligible indoor recreation costs, provided that costs do not exceed $11,000. Town staff are authorized to engage in a sole source procurement with Watson and Associates Economists Limited, since they did the 2018 DC background study. Engaging Watson and Associates will ensure consistency of approach, philosophical and methodological alignment of work product, and is likely to be the most expeditious manner of proceeding. Any unbudgeted costs which cannot be paid from the DC reserve are to be derived from management identified savings in the building department, public works department, or corporate services department, or combination thereof. So how this came about is through our audit committee meeting when we were looking at reserves, and we're seeing money going into reserves for outdoor recreation, but there was nothing there for indoor recreation. And part of the problem was when the DC study was brought forward, there was limited data, and I'm not even sure if we had data when the report was done, because really you look at financial reports from a year prior. So we had limited information. Now that we have the community center up and running, I was going to say robustly. Normally it's robust. There's an opportunity for us to look for an increase in DC charges that would be directed towards indoor recreation. And I just thought it was a good opportunity for us to capture some money for the MCC.
Okay. And do you have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Hildebrand. Thank you. And of course, that was a motion, not a notice of motion.
That was a motion,
Okay.
and it will be voted on tonight, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor, when
Okay,
council's
so
finished.
the motion, any further discussion or questions on the motion as presented? I take it, Councillor, that you did a good job presenting it. There is no questions.
And thanks to staff for the assistance.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the vote will begin with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt?
Yes.
Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that does carry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that does bring us to our next item on the agenda, being the confirming bylaw. And I have a motion put forth by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw number 4356, 2021, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 7th day of June, 2021. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there's no discussion, I will call for the vote.
I don't see any hands up, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, and that will begin with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin,
Yes.
and that carries. 3, Mr. Mayor, I have a motion put forth by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular scheduled meeting for June 21st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Mr. Mayor, I would begin the vote with Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is 8:12 and you can gavel out your meeting.
Okay, this meeting is finished, and good night, everyone.
Good evening.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Hey.